A very warm good morning to all. I, Dr. Sushma Verma, Associate Professor in the Department of Pharmaceutics, NIT Greater Noida, and Joint Secretary of the E-Conference, feel overwhelmed to welcome you all to the second day of the AICTE-sponsored E-Conference, Personalized Drug Delivery through 3D Printing, Newer Challenges for Pharma Industries. I hope you enjoyed the first technical session of the conference yesterday by Dr. Jagannath Sahu sir, and assure you that you will be benefited today also, as we are having a series of technical sessions from our experts of the industrial sector. The first technical session of the day is technical session 2, and it's my pleasure to introduce the first eminent speaker, Mr. Avikshit Saras, who is currently the Chief Operating Officer of I Print My Things 3D Prototyping. Mr. Saras has done his BSc Honours in Business Management Studies from School of Management, the University of Bradford, United Kingdom, and Masters in Development Finance from School of Environmental Education and Development, the University of Manchester, United Kingdom. He has served in various organizations like Orient Agro Private Limited and Limited before the setup of I Print My Things, the 3D prototyping, which is a New Delhi-based IPMT into 3D printing, providing 3D printing training, verticals like study abroad, life skills, hackathons, etc., and setting up of 3D printing labs in educational institutions. So I would like to invite Mr. Avikshit Saras to start with the technical session 2 on the topic 3D printing challenges in development of customized medicines. Please, sir.
Very good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, sir.
Very good morning, Dr. Majumdar, Director sir, other speakers and faculty members, participants. Thank you so much, NIT, for giving me this opportunity, giving me this platform to share my ideas, to share my knowledge on pharma 3D printing. Okay, let me just start the screen share. Okay, and I hope my screen is visible. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your screen is visible.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome, sir.
Let me just. Yeah. I think my connection is a bit. I think that I just. Sorry. All right. So the topic that has been assigned to me is the challenges in development of the customized medicines using 3D printing. A lot of work has been done, and a lot of work is already going on also. Okay, in this field, it's a very upcoming area. It's a very upcoming field where every you can say a month, if not every quarter, the results are emanating, and we see a lot of progress happening, a lot of interest from the industry, a lot of interest in the academia alike happening. So just a few snippets here and there, trying to make the context relevant more. I'm just starting that what's actually happening here. Okay, so I'll just go by the first one, friends. This is the electronic pill, okay, that you see, which contains two things. One is the medicine, the formulations, all right, and the other is the technology which goes behind it. And why is it electronic pill? Okay. It's controlled by Bluetooth. It can remain in the body for about a month and basically release the dosage, release the medicines over a period of time. So that is the new cutting edge pill that is happening, friends, with the advent of this industry 4.0, with the advent of the technological innovations that are happening, and you can see around you also a lot of developments, a lot of changes happening. Truly, when we say 3D printing, okay, it's actually democratization of design, democratization of production, okay, in which earlier we were seeing that a lot of these things were in the hand of a few, okay, just as you see that with the advent of Google, the use of encyclopedias, okay, got reduced because the information came into the hand of the masses. All right, earlier it was controlled by a few people. So the similar manner, production was controlled in the hands of few, designs were controlled in the hands of few. But now, as I tell my students also, they are born designers. Okay, so you have this now capability, the ability to design anything, to make anything. Okay, and talking in our context here, it is the democratization of medicine. So people such as your good selves, who are experts in the pharma domain, have truly this ability to create anything, to manufacture anything, those medicines. All right, so that is the context that we are talking about, and we see that proliferation happening. Next, there was this book, a very famous one by one Dr. Eric J. Topol, which was actually brought to my notice and knowledge by my mentor, Dr. M. Pant, some time ago. The Patient Will See You Now, which is more akin, which is more like saying that earlier we used to say that the doctor's appointment at this time, the doctor will see the patient, but now it's going the other way because of the technological progress happening, that the patient will see you now. The patient is more informed, he's more knowledgeable. Okay, the patient has that technology to do the self diagnosis, to do the self checks, right? Simple, like monitoring diabetes, checking the pulse, the heartbeats, all those technological gadgets like Fitbit or the pressure monitors are there, are available for the patients, and it's a step forward towards more better treatment, right? The doctor can focus on his areas of core competence. A doctor's area of core competence is analyzing what the results that has been brought to him or her, instead not of using the glucometer, using the blood pressure machine. That is not his area of core competence. So the doctor can now focus on his areas of analysis, in diagnosis, the giving the right kind of medicine. So that's the advent of the technology. And this actually a device that you see has been made by a friend. It's called Beto. I'm sure you might have seen these kind of devices before, but through the smartphone, he's able to monitor the patient's diabetes, and you can see the patient here actually giving a blood sample. The hardware goes inside the jack of the mobile phone. So it's the round jack or the C-type jack or the normal charging jacks through which the data is shared with the doctors, and the patient actually from his office or from the home can do the inspection, can do the testing, for example, of glucose and heartbeat, etc., and share the results with the doctor. So this is the kind of various advancements to talk about few of them that is happening in the domain of pharma. And of course, last but not the least, this was again a very hot topic, that by the year 2045 the death will become optional. Our two ends of the DNA, the telomeres and the telomeras, being repaired by humans themselves, and prolonging our life. Already we see a lot of the extension of the life expectancy which has happened globally, and people living much beyond 90, 100 in the developed worlds. So again, these things are happening, research is ongoing, and a lot of developments are coming of age. Next, I would just like to do a bit of SWOT analysis here of the technology 3D printing and the domain pharma that we have. So again, this is just to set the context right before we proceed and delve into greater depths of the subject. Strengths to talk about, again, it's a very new and upcoming, as I have mentioned, nascent use cases are coming up, right? Newer kinds of products are being developed which were not there before. Okay, newer kind of treatments are emerging, newer kind of diagnosis, ways of diagnosing, I would say, are coming up, as you have seen in the case of BETO, monitoring of diabetes, for example. And all these friends are coming up in the open source domain. They are absolutely available to all. This research is ongoing, and the best part is the open source platform which is there, which allows many pharmacists to collaborate, many scientists to collaborate amongst themselves, their peers, or from the industry also. And 3D printing, when we talk about, okay, and tomorrow Mr. Shok Kamal will talk in greater depth on 3D printing technology. You will see, and you might have experienced also, that there is a high degree of customization which you can go. There is a high degree of personalization that can happen. So combining 3D printing and pharma, we see that a high degree of personalized drug deliveries, personalized medicines, personalized treatments, okay, like that, there is the customization level is quite high. And for the first time, it's not as if one size fits all is going to work, but a person specific treatment and diagnosis can be done. So this is my thing on the strengths. And of course, 3D printing, you see that since it's on demand manufacturing, it's on demand consumption, so there is lesser need for storage space. By that I mean that if you are requiring a medicine to be made for a specific person or a group of persons, right, in that area, in that locality or that vicinity, so that much amount of medicine is required to be made, and when it is needed to be shipped, at that time only you ship it. So our production spaces are getting closer to our market. So there is in 3D printing, that's the hallmark. We say that it's on-demand manufacturing, it's customized and personalized manufacturing. There is a reduced need for logistics or transport, for that matter. So drugs, pills need not be made in future in bulk, in very large quantities, but smaller quantities, smaller batches will be the way to go. And above all, these are easy to modify, easy to play around with, easy to tweak, I would say, rather, within the constraints, and the scalability of APIs are also there. So when there are strengths, there are weaknesses also, and one of the main primary weakness of this is the awareness, and that's why we are here, to spread the knowledge, to create that latent demand which is always there. All right, once the volumes pick up, once you'll see a lot of proliferation of this technology, the current expenses, the amount of the costs which are high will come down with more demand, with more competition, as you will see in the times to come. So in the next, I would say 3 years, this technology should reach its further future potential and some amount of maturity level. Since the R&D is ongoing, it's spreading, so I would say there is a high risk, because various parameters need to be considered, various things, various challenges, as you will see ahead, need to be addressed. So given that scenario, there is a high risk component currently. Once the use cases also increase, you will see that these weaknesses, these risks get mitigated. So there is a lot of opportunities, and if I'm able to reach out to the academia, all right, fully, I would say that there is a lot of excitement. There is a lot of buzz about the 3D printing and pharma. Okay, yes, it is a nascent and an upcoming market. Okay, but that has the first mover advantages. All right, and we had also worked in the past with NIET developing prototypes. Okay, so there were prototypes of customized and personalized drug deliveries that NIET promoted. One of their students got a prototype made. I would not like to address it fully what it was, but yes, given the fact that many of the pharmacy colleges are having the incubation facilities inside, and they are having their own labs, so they can be a very good advantage of being the first mover in this domain. It's a very big opportunity for them to harness the higher margins, to get the patents on the formulations. All right, all this can lead to a great amount of entrepreneurship in the colleges, and promote this kind of democratized medicines in our towns and cities. All right, so it's a huge potential for the pharmaceutical industry also, creating such kind of joining with such kind of research, joining with such kind of pharmacy institutes, for example NIET, and making their APIs more scalable, making their formulations customized and personalized to the masses. There are a few threats, I would say, because it's all about technology, and technology, as we are well aware, has its pros, has its cons, right? So the same automobile, I always quote this example to my students, can take us from place A to place B, that is transport us, can also kill someone if not used or driven properly. So similarly is the case of fake counterfeit products, rope pills, medicines given to the markets. Okay, um, the with the race to the bottom, the lowest price, we can see that quality is the first thing that suffers. And due to COVID-19, you see a lot of laxity coming in the research, lesser research happening because of the lockdowns and all. So that has been a threat. And of course the IPR issues which are there, intellectual property rights. Somebody has already taken a formulation, IPR, and inadvertently somebody violates that. So these are the kind of threats which are being, of course, dealt with by the industry, by the academia, and I'm sure the threats will get mitigated over time as the research matures, as the technology progresses. So to talk about the ideal scenario, okay, here with the pharma and the 3D printing. So many pharma companies rely on heavy stress on test marketing. All right, especially the startups, right? The incubators are having limited financial capacities and resources. They are bootstrapped. All right, and there's a limited market size, and there is a lot of customization that they wish to do. And I will share one example of this through the video. So where you see a very beautiful, beautiful amalgamation, I would say, of 3D printing and the pharma domain. Let me open this video for you. On YouTube, it's a collaborative project between FabRx and the University College of London. I hope it's visible. Okay. I hope you got the basic broad idea now of what we've been talking about and discussing. Is there any question you can just ask me anytime, and feel free to stop me and go ahead. All right. So again, that's the last slide on what's happening, part of the intro module. As you've already seen, those advancements happening in there in UK. Here also, zero bacteria 3D printing environment are being created with the given technology available. That you see is actually a 3D printer, ShaperJet supplied by us, and in a zero bacteria environment, the pharmacist is actually using it, the FDM technology, to create molds, to create capsules, and experiment with it. These are tailor-made devices and treatments, okay, which is happening in terms of the pharmacy, in terms of the testing they're happening. Thereafter, the basic process of the pills that are being made, is undergoing actual change. All right, and that change, is happening pretty fast. All right, and the process of making pills, the medicines, is going to change. All right, is going to see a radical shift, as we have already discussed and seen. There will be more flexibility in terms of customization. We will be focusing on smaller populations, focusing on a group size DNA, lesser clinical trials, BMIs, age, sex. So a greater amount of customization is what is happening, and instead of making large batch pills or medicines for larger populations and batches, there will be smaller batches. The success rate, of course, we suppose it will go up because lesser amount of clinical trials will be required, and if there is any tweaking, that will be possible. So there will be basically greater amount of speed and flexibility in the development and the process of the medicines and pills. So the basic fundamental question, comes in, and we are trying to answer through a series of slides here. Is that why 3D printing in pharma? Okay, this is the basic fundamental question, and yes, very rightly, as the theme, as the topic also suggests, it's all about drug delivery systems moving closer to the patient than vice versa. Okay, the other innovation which has happened is that the micro needles are being developed. This is another use case I'm taking up. First use case rather I'm taking up, that the micro needles are being made in a fashion which are actually there are barbs inside it. There are these protrusions in the design that are possible to make, which are backward facing, and once the penetration of the same happens in the skin, we see, and it has been, the research shows that there is a better adhesion of the microneedles to the tissues. There is better interlocking system, and when the drug delivery is happening through these microneedles, the disbursement of medicines, the absorption rate is higher. So this is something new which came up, and as mentioned before, it's all about giving customized medicines as per the patient's age, sex, gender, biomass index, DNA, and there is no size fits all approach here, which the industry is working towards. The other thing, with the multiple dosage systems, this technology is evolving, in which we see that there is one polypill, okay, which is there, and if a patient has multiple ailments, those ailments are actually put into one, say diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease. So there is a polypill which is treating multiple ailments, as mentioned here. All right, or as I have spoken. There are complex drug release profiles, which through these polypills are actually made easy. There is an approach towards targeted drug delivery systems to say, if the treatment is of colon, then the other tissues or the cells should not be affected. So the side effects are reduced, and there is a targeted drug delivery to the colon area only, which actually, as I mentioned, is reducing the side effects and of course improving the efficacy of the medicine. Then we see that there is faster disintegration of the medication in seconds, rather than earlier it used to take minutes or so. You have seen in this video of the School of Pharmacy, UCL, that as soon as they put the medicine in the water, it dissolves very fast. All right. Then the other approach is towards the floating drug delivery system, right? They say it's more effective in the gastric medication, but then there are certain rules that need to be adhered in terms of maintaining the acidity levels, maintaining the fluid levels in the body. So these approaches, friends, as you see, are all giving us that answer that why not 3D printing in pharmaceutical domains, in pharma industry, should happen. And as I mentioned to you earlier also, the issue of time controlled delivery, in which say a patient is taking 15 odd tablets in a day, 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening, and 5 in the afternoon. So he can take just one tablet, and there are multiple layers in the tablet, in the capsule, which gradually the layers permeate and allow the release of the medicine. So it's a delayed release mechanism in which the flow is actually moderated by the cap here, and accordingly, as in the time passes, so the first layer gets removed, say in the morning, and a certain amount of medicine flows out. Second layer is removed in the afternoon. Again, a certain dosage goes out, so on and so forth. So these time controlled deliveries were earlier not possible, and of course we see that there could be a further reduction in the number of pills that a patient is consuming. And I'm sure you are aware, I don't have to repeat it, that at times patients miss their medication because of the number of number of pills that they need to take in is far more, and there are slippages in the same. Then we see that the drug delivery systems are can be attuned as per the rhythm of the body, the circadian rhythm of the body, that is the heartbeat or the pulse or the blood pressure, benefiting in certain specialized treatments, as the research has reported, which is the cardiovascular or arthritis, or the attention deficit syndromes. So these way, in these manners, you are able to do a more efficient addressal of the disease. Then we have multi-phase release of the medicine aids, as we have discussed. Once again, helping us to treat multiple ailments and increase the efficiency of the treatment, at the same time reducing the side effects. Then one can have implantable drug delivery systems under the skin, the subcutaneous drug deliveries, which is could be primarily of antibiotics or insulins that diabetics take, or the steroids. Next, friends, we see that a lot of drug delivery could happen, which are it's poorly soluble drugs. They are not able to actually dissolve better. And in this video also you have seen that the 3D printed pill was having a greater amount of solubility, and which actually helps in a better ingestion of the medicines, and of course avoid pains, etc. Again, highly toxic and potent drug deliveries, which are earlier not possible have actually been made possible with the help of proteins and peptides, and the same in the dairy domain also, with the help of proteins, a lot of ingredients have been made. So it's a lot of interlinkages also that are there in across disciplines. We have already seen the use of microneedles, which were being addressed for painless drug deliveries with the reverse barbs, or the earlier ones which were more like silicon patches. But again, at the advent of technology, the things are changing fast. There is the epilepsy drug called Spritum. Tomorrow, Mr. Ashok Kamal will be talking about it more. It has been developed, which is the first actually FDA approved drug. And there are other, medical devices which have been tested, processes which have been validated, labeling systems which have been reintroduced because of this advent of technology of 3D printing in pharma, and they have been done all by the US Federal and Drug Administration. So we see that a lot of these parameters, right? For example, of the microneedles, to talk about that the shape, spacing, patch areas, aspect ratios, height, compositions, they're having multiple interlinkages in terms of the efficiency, in terms of the efficacy also, in terms of drug loading, tested area. So it is not just one linkage, but there are cross linkages of these across targeted cells, or the release rates, or the penetration strengths, etc. With the all these questions being answered, there are a few questions I would like to raise at this stage, which directly impact the challenges. A few of these challenges I have already discussed, okay, but a few of them I would like to put forth before you. And the first being, of course, the adverse impact due to product deficiencies. All right. Not all of these are FDA approved or regulated, right? A lot of technology is being developed, right? A lot of technology is, the research is going on. The second important part, that if there is, God forbid, any implications due to the product, then who's actually liable? Is it the pharmacist, the designer, the manufacturer of the 3D printers, the doctors, the hardware, the software who are being developed, okay, or the material suppliers? So the product liability implications are a big, question mark, that who should be held responsible. Then how do we decide on the binders, adhesives, which one to use, because these are still underway, under process. So like in product designing, we have a lot of check marks to tick before we actually, I'm sure in this pharma 3D printing domain, there are far more other which are there. And of course, the pharmacotechnical properties in terms of friability, uniformity, weight, the angle of repose, disintegration time. A lot of these, I'm sure a lot of if not a few pharmacopoeias and would need to be rewritten. Then the other is what happens in case of hacking, in terms of the blueprints being stolen or being counterfeited, right? These are challenges before the industry, before the academia, to overcome and come out with I think self-regulations, regulatory bodies to counter these. The other important aspect is that will the insurance providers actually underwrite these treatments, underwrite the expenses of what is being incurred, because these are all very novel and very modern scientific approaches, okay, and still there is a lot of work which needs to be done. And of course, we would like that any kind of contamination happens, like you had about 798 people getting affected due to the contamination at the New England compounding center in the US some years ago. and it was an outbreak which was actually contained at that time, but about 100 odd people lost their lives there. So these are various challenges which need to be overcome, which need to be addressed and taken care of. All right. Any doubts? Any questions, friends? If you are having, let me know. I will be happy to address them. So for many, if this topic is new, especially 3D printing, I would just like to address by saying that it's spreading fast across India. All right, from tier 1, it has moved on to tier 2 and now tier 3 cities. I'm myself training hundreds of my students in 3D printing, in design, pan India, who are in remote locations and towns and places, cities, and big impacts are there of 3D printing in of course medical. A lot of prosthetics are being made, biomedic works are happening. All right, and you see internal and external organs of course being 3D printed. Pharma, I have already discussed, I don't need to go back. But apart from the other industries, yeah, medical is having its fair share of involvement of 3D printing. A lot of R&D centers are using 3D printing. The technology is going exponentially in India, and of course with the Make in India initiative by the government is pitching for a lot of manufacturing happening in this sector, and there is a huge growing requirement of 3D printers. So we're also trying to align 3D printing, in various manners and various methods. So this is one such use case in the agri-business domains that are there in fabrication industries. Then of course a lot of work we are doing with the universities in and around Delhi, northern India. So this is, I'm just trying to give you a basic feel of the technology. Of course, there is huge linkage across domains and across industries. Be it manufacturing, be it services, be across even in manufacturing entities, like we've seen in automobile, fast-moving consumer goods. We've seen in architecture also, right? And I would say the list is pretty huge, apart from the medical, which of course we are focused upon here. 3D printing is something which cuts professions, which cuts industries, and there is an application in each and every sector, be it, of course, be it tourism as diverse as archaeological restoration, or defense industries like weapons manufacturing, or civil services like what municipalities are providing, or construction industries, food industries, entertainment, you name it, and there are actually applications. And why we're actually doing this is to get India to the next level, to get the Make in India slogan, the Make in India initiative a success. All right. And I'm happy to connect with you later also, and if there is any advanced understanding you require, we'd be happy to do. Of course, Mr. Kamal will be covering more on the 3D printing pharma industry applications tomorrow in his session at 11 o'clock. So do ask him, or you can ask me the questions, and we'll be happy to. And yeah, this is something that we do in our vocation, that we set up 3D printing labs. We train in educational institutions. We've had a number of sessions at NIET itself. Okay, and we install 3D printers, 3D sketchers, scanners across industry and academia. There are trainings that are ongoing, and there's a government recognized certification for the same that is there. And of course, yeah, we believe in democratization of design, democratization of production, democratization of medicine also at the same time. And of course, we are always hiring and training people. That's a book that I've written on 3D printing. I will share the link also of the same with you. Makes me actually the first author of a book which was published by BPB Publications about 2 years back, which makes me the first Asian author to write a book on 3D printing. And it's mostly focused on use cases, beginners, and of course design is an important part. And these are some of our events and all that have been there. So thank you once again, NIET, for giving me this platform. And our mission, friends, is to educate you, educate in practical 3D education. So whatever we say should not be just theoretical, should be practical, and of course making technology a no-brainer for the masses. And this is something which is explained. No need to go ahead with it. And I have my request for questions. I'm open. Let me know. We still have about, I think, 10 minutes, ma'am. We can 5-10 minutes or any questions. I'll be happy to take. No problem.
Okay. Yes, sir. I have some questions on behalf of some participants. I'll be asking them to you. So first question is, are there any softwares for 3D modeling? And if there are so can you recommend some?
Okay, so there are a lot of softwares which are there. So again, there is no one size fits all policy, and it totally depends on the kind of designing that one wants to do. Starting from basic CAD softwares, like I would say Tinkercad, 123D, Fusion 360. To a very advanced, of course, Fusion 360 is entry level. It's about medium to advanced levels also. A lot of it is being taught in educational institutions, in engineering colleges. So you got SolidWorks, Solid Edge, Creo. So again, the list is huge. It totally depends on what is the aim of the person who's wanting to do the design. So different CAD softwares for engineering, different for jewelry applications. For example, Rhino is used a lot in jewelry. But yes, any basic entry-level software should do. And in case of pharma, it's more of the formulation, which is more important, I would say.
Okay, and this next question is, how long will it take to practically establish 3D printing for pharmaceuticals?
So it totally depends on the outreach of the institution. Typical bio 3D printers would start from about 20 to 30 odd lakhs. But in case budgets are less, one can always invest in a FDM 3D printer like I had shown in that slide, which cost about a lakh and a half, and continue with the research. Continue with the works of making molds, designing various treatments. That is all possible to do. But yes, I mean, it's because it's a new upcoming technology. The costs are a little high, but I mean, one shouldn't get disheartened, and there are ways and means that we can discuss, and you can go around it and invest in the technology and set up your own 3D printing lab in pharma. Yeah.
And the next question is, we are bound by regulatory bodies for pharmaceuticals. What are the regulatory guidelines in case of customized and personalized medicines?
Okay, so I wouldn't know that much that for pharma, what are the guidelines, but I would say that Spritum, the drug which has been actually approved by FDA, that if that is possible to make, I'm sure at the R&D stage at this level, even we can do a lot. So best is to get to the I'm sure the concerned regulatory body here in India, show them the research, show them the guidelines of FDA which made for Spritum, the drug which is for epilepsy treatment. And this happened about 4 or 5 years back. It's not something very recent that has happened. So if they can do it, I'm sure our Indian pharmacopoeia also will be capable of giving us that go ahead and then approvals.
I hope there is no more question for this session. Thank you, sir, for your stimulating speech. It was a pleasure listening to you, to your interesting and informative lecture. Thank you so much. Now it's over to Dr. Soumya Das, Associate Professor, Pharmacy Institute, NIT Greater Noida, my co-host for today's session. So, Soumya ma'am, please.
Thank you, Sushma ma'am. Very good morning to everyone, dear participants and delegates of second day of AICTE sponsored conference. I, Dr. Soumya Das, Associate Professor, Department of Pharmacology, Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology, Greater Noida, welcomes you all. I am highly grateful to the experts who accepted our invitation and will share their tremendous knowledge in this conference. I am sure, dear delegates, you all will have fruitful and rewarding exchange of knowledge on the concerned topics of this conference. I wish you every success with this important conference, and I look forward to learning about the outcomes with your valuable suggestions and feedback. Thank you all for joining this AICTE sponsored National E-Conference. Stay safe, stay home. We are very happy and grateful to have such an eminent person who is working as CEO at Straner Technology LLP, Bangalore area, India. I would like to welcome Mr. K. Padmanabhan sir to share their tremendous knowledge in the field of 3D printing concepts and potential in pharmaceutical industry. Sir, Mr. Padmanabhan sir has done his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and master's in tools engineering. He worked in a few professional organizations like Xerox, TVS, DuPont, and Interflex. He was the CEO of Indian operations of a US-based multinational for 18 years. He started from scratch and built a thriving business with 2 factories and served customers in all over India as well as overseas. His startup Stratnal Technologies LLP 3 years back. Stratnal is involved in providing engineering solutions to customers through additive manufacturing. His area of exposure includes manufacturing engineering, supply chain, product development, business development, and human resources. Presently, as an entrepreneur engaged in additive manufacturing, working with companies in the market segment of aerospace, foundry, electronics, automotive, and healthcare industries. He is very much passionate about people development and continuous learning. Today's topic, sir's topic is 3D printing concepts and potential in pharmaceutical industry. Now, I would like to welcome Padmanabhan sir. Sir, it's up to you. Sir, please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes, sir. Very well.
Good.
It's audible, clearly audible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Appreciate that.
Welcome.
What I intend doing today is, before I start saying anything, I want to make a disclaimer first. I'm not from the pharma industry. I'm mostly from engineering industry. So what I intend doing is share some information, some very basic information about manufacturing engineering, about how 3D printing developed and what are the different technologies available within 3D printing. And then give you a few examples to show how it is being used in pharma industry. These examples that I'm going to show, these are essentially not from any personal experience. They're all derived from what I read in the net, and I'll present you a couple of examples, which hopefully ignite imagination of other users in the pharma industry and they take forward from that. Obviously, some of these might be some part of this presentation could also be a repetition of what they might have already seen or they may be already aware of. Kindly bear with me if I repeat some other things that have been already discussed. So that said, I'll start my presentation. Please start the presentation. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now, right? Is my screen visible now?
Not yet. Okay.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. So welcome once again to this presentation that I have. If any of you have questions regarding this, we can do it two ways. The coordinator might stop me when I'm doing it, or we can collect the questions and I can answer at the end of the game. I'm comfortable with both ways of doing this. So welcome again. I'll start out with manufacturing. Manufacturing as an engineering or an enterprise activity is broadly classified into formative, subtractive, and additive. When I say formative, subtractive, and additive, I'm putting them in very broad buckets of how we can classify manufacturing activities. The formative process essentially deals with flowing certain material or forcing some material into a constrained shape. The typical examples would be casting, forging, molding, bending, and drawing. And this is probably one of the oldest manufacturing industries which have been evolving over thousands of years. Okay, and if you go to the next bucket in my manufacturing industry is subtractive processes. In subtractive process, typically you start with a bigger block and remove material from it to arrive at the final shape. Sculpting, carpentry, machining, these are classic examples of subtractive manufacturing. Obviously, in all these kind of manufacturing processes, you start with a material which is bigger than the final shape that you want, and you keep chipping away material or sculpting material away or take it out by machine tools and do the machining. And these processes have been evolving over hundreds of years. Okay, so as I said, the formative in manufacturing has happened for thousands of years, and subtractive processes have happened over hundreds of years. Now, the additive manufacturing is something new that we are all be hearing. And additive manufacturing, 3D printing is part of the additive manufacturing ecosystem. And this is a relatively newer technology that has evolved over a few decades. Depending upon whom you talk to, you might someone say the technology is 35 years old, someone is maybe 45 years old. So we are talking about just a few decades here. So this is just a historical perspective of different manufacturing processes and how they have evolved. So even though this industry is 30, 40 years old, from a historical perspective, it's still a nascent technology that is still developing and all that. The interesting aspect about additive manufacturing is that in the last, even though it is 30, 40 years old, till about 2000, sometime between 2005 and 10, there are very few players in the marketplace in terms of technology, and all these players had made huge investment in R&D and development and all that work. So they also had very strong IP rights. So the market was constrained by the number of market players, protected by the IPs of those people who made those huge investments. Sometime in 2005 and 10, some of these IPs and patents started expiring, and new players started coming into the marketplace. So post 2010, suddenly the market started exploding, and you started a lot of applications happening in multiple segments. And One of the segment which could be of specific application case, which could be of specific interest to pharma industry, or the two aspects of 3D printing. Are a lot of aspects. There are two aspects of 3D printing which could be of specific interest to the pharma industry, or the ease of shape complexity. Unlike traditional manufacturing of formative processes or subtractive processes, additive manufacturing lends itself to a lot of ease in terms of developing complex shapes. That is one. And the second thing is, since these are not hard tooled in the traditional sense of the word, and these processes are essentially digital processes, customization for individual users, end users in pharma industry, most probably the end user is a patient. So mass customization for individual patients is possible, which makes the technology very attractive to the pharma industry. Okay, now you might have heard many people using the word 3D printing. Some people use the word additive manufacturing. So what is 3D printing? What is additive manufacturing? Today, both these words are kind of being used synonymously, but in a more technically intensive discussion, additive manufacturing is a larger ecosystem where 3D printing is part of making the process. Then there are aspects related to development of equipment, development of software, new materials being developed, new finishing processes being developed. The whole ecosystem is being referred to as additive manufacturing, and the physical act of doing only developing the part, the printing the part is being now called 3D printing. So in a very casual discussion, it can be used synonymously, but if you have broader conceptual discussion, this is a distinction between additive manufacturing and 3D printing. Additive manufacturing can be construed as a framework, and 3D printing could be the specific process of building those parts. Okay. Now, what is 3D printing? Okay, there is a dictionary meaning from the Oxford Lexicon Dictionary. It says the action or the process of making a physical object from a three-dimensional digital model, typically by laying down many thin layers of a material in succession. This is the dictionary definition of 3D printing. The physical explanation, if you forget about trying to explain this in just 2 sentences, you want to make a little bit more meaningful explanation of this, that would probably go like this. 3D printing, as I said earlier, some also called additive manufacturing in some context, is a process of creating an object from a CAD model. Typically, all 3D printing starts with a digital CAD model. Essentially, the 3D printing is achieved by successively adding layers on top of earlier layer. So you take the CAD model and then you repeatedly print them layer by layer, and then when you have repeated layer building, it attains a 3-dimensional object. So each layer that you lay down will be a cross section of the CAD model at a certain cross section of the object. So in simple terms, it is a process of repeatedly printing a 2D layer one on top of another. So that is what 3D printing is all about. Now here is a simple example of a representative example of 3D printing happens. This is a thin-walled hemispherical part as an example here. So when you take sections at many places, each section will look like a circular cross section. So you keep on putting circular cross sections one over the other. Every layer, the diameter would keep increasing, and they'll adhere to each other, and finally you get a hemispherical thin shell. So this is an illustration of the meaning for 3D printing. Now, what is the typical workflow in 3D printing? Okay, so the typical workflow would go something like this. You have to first create a CAD model, the final object, whether it's a tablet or is it a drug delivery device or is it a drug implant device, whatever device that you want to make, you have to have a physical CAD model of this. This is the digital model. And somebody in the earlier session asked about different CAD models, and the earlier speaker gave some examples of entry-level CAD models. SolidWorks, CATIA, Pro-E, these kind of Inventor, these are kind of software which is used in engineering application. There are these kind of software need a lot more technically intensive training to be able to handle them well, and investment level could be high. As against that, there are other software for entry-level software for people with less engineering skills. Now, these CAD models that you develop from them, And mostly when you port them into a 3D printing process, the traditional CAD models cannot be handled by 3D printers. So when the 3D printer originally evolved, the model that was used was a model called STL. STL stands for triangulation. Yeah, STL stands for Standard Triangulation Language. It was evolved by one Mr. Hull in the US sometime in the 1980s. And since it had historic precedence, most of the people just followed the STL model. Now, later on, another standard came in, which is called OBJ models. The difference between STL models and OBJ models, they are pretty much identical, except that OBJ models can also take color information on top of the STL model. STL model is unitless and it is colorless. It's mostly monochrome. It is always monochrome. Whereas STL at individual tessellation levels, individual pixel levels, it can take color there. And then these were evolving. And then there's a third set of standards which was originally suggested by Microsoft. They came with a standard called 3MF. And they went with 3MF for quite some time. But because of historical legacy reasons, the STL and OBJ language got adopted very strongly by people, and 3MF was not gaining traction. So sometimes in 2013 or 2014, Microsoft opened up the 3MF architecture and generated a consortium of all the stakeholders in the technology. So now there are many people, many technology companies are signed into that 3MF consortium. So now all the three are being used. In addition, the 3MF has model structures have this additional advantage that at a voxel level, in addition to dimensional aspect, geometrical aspect, and the color aspect, it can also have material property aspects. Given a model, if some part of the model has to be rigid and some part of the model has to be flexible or softer, some has to be different hardnesses they have, temperature resistance they have, all this information can be built into the model at the design stage itself. So 3MF has the capability to handle multiple aspects of a digital model that you're creating. So this is still evolving. The 3MF model is evolving. From industry practice as it stands today, even though STL model is the oldest one, even though it is 3 or 4 years old, that is the most prevalently used. Probably 90% of the work or even 97% of the work still happens on STL model, simply because of legacy reasons. There are a lot of easy open source software that can handle STL and OBJ, so they are being adopted. The adoption level is very high within the STL model. Now the next step in the workflow is you have to port that STL model or the OBJ model into a proprietary software called a slicer. The main purpose of the slicer is the slicer could be either an open source slicer. Open source slicers could be either free or paid, and typically these are not very expensive software. There are a lot of free software that are available. Open source software you can use, or you can use paid software to get a lot more features and controls, and it will have ability to protect your data and all that. So choice is up to the user. For most entry-level users, we recommend use free software till you gain some experience on this. So the purpose of the slicer is essentially to prepare the preparation instructions for the 3D printer to use. And these instructions come in a language called G-code. So slicer essentially takes the CAD model and converts it into machine understandable codes, which are G-code. So that is the purpose of the slicer. So we'll come back to this slide a little bit later again about the slicer and what all you can do with the slicer. We'll come back to it a little later. The next step is obviously 3D printing. So the G-codes which are developed in the slicer software is imported into the machine. There are several ways of importing the machine. You can either take a USB stick, load your slicing, then directly put it into the machine, or you can connect your machine in the network and you can upload your G-code into the machine. So there are multiple ways of doing this. So this data is transferred to the machine, and from then on, the machine takes over, uses the code to make the part, start making the part. So after the part is made, you have to remove the part from the 3D printer itself, the 3D printing machine. So in some other technologies, a very simple act of just pulling it out of the bed. In some other technologies, it's a little bit more involved in the sense that there are something called supports which are developed in 3D printing, and the supports and the machine bed, there may be a very strong addition. You may need mechanical forces to remove them. Sometimes you need machining to do this. So depending upon the technology that we use within the 3D printing arena, the removing process could be a very simple process or a very complex process. The last one is post-process. In most 3D printing technology as it happens today is not ready for use as soon as it's printed. There are some post-processing activities that you have to do to be able to bring it to a usable level. So these are the different steps involved in the workflow of the 3D printing process. We'll come back to this slicing thing a little later, because the slicing has got, understanding the slicing software or the features of slicing software would give you slightly deeper knowledge of how we can deploy the technology for the end use that you have in mind, whichever market segments you are in, whichever application that you are in. So that will kind of give you how you can achieve the end uses by manipulating the input requirement of the slicing generator. When it comes to application, 3D printing, I think again has got at a very broad level. At a very broad level, I've got three application segments or application classification. The first classification, we generally call them as applications for design validation. When a product is getting designed in whatever field, whether it's in aerospace or healthcare or in foundry or electronics, whichever case, before they go into production, the designer and the design team want to ensure that the product design aspect from a manufacturability aspect and from the end use functional aspect, or do met the design intent. And typically, so you have to make some prototypes. You have to make, sometimes you do multiple prototypes. Depending upon the industry that is in, they call these stages of prototypes in different names. The name is not important. What is important? These are called iterations in design. So 3D printing is used in iteration in design because the investment cost is very low, and the lead time to generate these iteration samples are very, very small. So that is one use case. The second use case for 3D printing is when you are into a production, either a low volume, high mix production, or you're in a high volume production, whichever production area you're in, you'll need a lot of internal tools for increasing productivities and efficiency. The classical examples are assembly fixtures, or you want to do inspection fixtures, or you want operator aids, so or productivity aids, storage aids. There are different things. These are parts of very ideal application for 3D printer. So these kind of parts are neither used for design validation nor any of these companies send out of their factory. They're used inside the factory. So this we call production aids. The first set of usage is called design validation. The second set of usage is called production aid. The third set of parts are the parts we call end use parts. End use parts are the parts that are 3D printed and get used and get shipped out of the person making those devices and used by the end user. So the other three end users. So these are the three broad application segments for 3D printing. And the slicing software has got a big role for you to influence your actual usage for these different applications. We'll come back to that a little later. Now we talk about different kind of 3D printing. I'm starting with VAT photopolymerization here, because that is one of the oldest 3D printing technologies there. Again, this is some 35 years old. When I say old, what I mean is within the realm of the history of 3D printing, this is one of the oldest ones. Essentially, this works on the principle of photopolymerization. Again, at the scientific level, 3D printing has got very simply, they got only some 3 or 4 energy sources they use to build the part, to aggregate the part from particles or filaments. The 3 scientific principles are: you use either photopolymerization, or you use some kind of an energy input in mostly thermal input, or third one is you use some kind of additives. So you use droplet of adhesive to bind particles together. These are the 3 principles, principles of physics that are deployed in different technologies. The actual technology today probably could be some, in actual use could be some 10 or 11 techniques are already in place. There are another 7, 8 in evolution. And so all of them follow one of the three physical principles. The delivery mechanism is what changes the technology. Having said that, the photopolymerization uses, as the name goes, you use materials which are photosensitive, and you use UV light to polymerize them. So within that, there are three different technologies: SLA, DLP, and CDLP. SLA stands for serial lithography, as I said, one of the oldest one. So the raw material is in the form of a resin, a liquid resin, a high viscosity resin, and then they on each layer of the resin or top layer, you write with a laser. The 3D printer has got the ability to write with a laser. So wherever laser touches the resin, that those areas get solidified. So you get a 2D structure of the thing. Then the liquid is changed to a next position, and then you write on top of that. Successfully you build that. So the difference between SLA and DLP is that SLA and DLP work on pretty much the same physical principles, but the difference is in SLA you write like you write with a pen, whereas in DLP you project like you project on a screen. So every section that you print, one snapshot is projected with a UV light, and the whole layer gets formed. So DLP is foreseen as a much faster process than SLA. CDLP is again very similar to DLP. This is a patented process of a company in the US. Not many people have access to this technology. It's in a product, right? There you also use an oxygen layer between the resin and the DLP screens to make the printing faster. So it's very close to DLP, except that production rates are much faster. And it's in a closed environment. There are no open source materials for this. These are closed source materials. Next one is the material extrusion. This is one of the most ubiquitous methodologies adopted in 3D printing. Essentially here the material comes in the form, the raw material comes in the form of a polymer filament. These filaments can come in different diameters, but the most common diameters used in industry today are 2.85 mm and 1.75 mm. The reason it started, why there are two standards, again legacy reasons. When sometime this technology started in late 80s or 90s by a company called Stratasys. 2.85 millimeter ABS wires are available for plastic welding industry. So just picked it up, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel and started using it. So the whole technology went that way. And sometime later, the 1.75 standard also evolved. So from a standardized perspective, there are both 2.85 and 1.75 diameter filaments are being used. So what happens to this filament is the filament gets extruded through a hot nozzle here. So once it gets into a hot nozzle, it comes out through a very narrow orifice of the filament. The orifice diameter could be as small as 0.2 millimeter, it could be as big as 0.81 millimeter. In very large scale FDM printing, the filament itself could be 7-8 millimeter diameter, and the nozzle itself could be 3 millimeter diameter. But those are all not relevant to the pharma industry. So probably 1.75 mm filament is the most relevant thing for the pharma industry. And then these extruder, the nozzle, you have an XYZ coordinate movement of the nozzle, and the filament gets printed out in layer by layer, very similar to SLA, where instead of writing with a laser, the whole nozzle moves and writes the material on one layer. Then the table or the bed moves, and then the next layer gets printed, and so on and so forth. You will the whole layer. So this is the FDM technology. The material jetting technology. In material jetting technology, there are again multiple technologies. Drop on demand, MJF, and NPJ. There are different kinds of technology. Essentially, what is being done here? This is again a photopolymerization technology where the material gets printed by something like an inkjet printer. You have an ink head, like an inkjet printer. Most of us would have seen an inkjet printer, so you know what I'm sure you know what I'm saying. So the inkjet printer has got very fine needle size orifices, multiple orifices. You print it through these inkjet printer kind of printer head, and then you expose them to UV light. So as the printer goes printing here, the UV light follows it and cures the whole filament printer. Then the next layer gets printed. So the material jetting is essentially very similar to photopolymerization, except that the dispensation and engineering involved is different. Binder jetting is another interesting example. In binder jetting, what you do is the raw material used in the powder form. This might be of some interest to the pharma industry because in pharma industry, a lot of powders are being used. So in the binder jetting technology, you use adhesives as binders. So you have the powders on the bed level. So you put one layer of powder and inkjet the binder on certain geometries that you want, and the next layer a different kind of geometry. So as you print this, you get a finished part, 3D printed part. So this is binder jet printing. The next is powder bed fusion. In powder bed fusion, there are multiple principles deployed. Multi-jet fusion comes from, this is again, this particular thing is a proprietary technology of Hewlett-Packard, which is getting very popular because of, though the investment levels are not, there are some financial entry-level barriers in terms of investment, but the production costs are very, very interesting here. So the way this technology works is, they preheat the polymer to a certain temperature just below the sintering temperature, and they use heat. They use some definition inks for it to make it heat absorbable, and then they heat it up with infrared. So this is the proprietary technology of Hewlett-Packard. SLS was proprietary till 2009-10. Now there are third-party players in SLS technology, selective laser sintering. In the earlier speaker, he was showing some SLS centrology from this company called Sinteract, and they were showing some applications in the pharma industry. Direct energy is that the energy is directly applied into the material. Like the lens technology is very similar to FDM, except that the heat source that comes through an external laser source. So metal gets fused at the time of deposition of there. And here instead of laser, they use electron beam. So these are different kinds of things. This is at a large scale industrial applications where these kind of things get deployed. The last one is sheet lamination. In sheet lamination, they use this technology where they use either a composite or paper, and they use laser cutting and inkjet printing to make layers and make the layers adhere to each other. So it's a combination of laser cutting and using addition between layers as a way. And these are generally used, other than composites, when the paper is getting used, it's essentially used for point of sale display, look and feel prototypes and things like that. That the 3D printed part made out of paper have very low strength. It's mostly for when you have applications where you have aesthetically appealing color requirements, you need color requirement, then LOM is a good application that you can work with. So this is a broad explanations of different technologies that are happening within the 3D printing arena. Now I'm coming back to here. I'm coming back to here on the workflow that we talked about. Where now that we talked about different technologies that we have, I'm just hoping this might make a better sense. So I'm bringing this discussion back here. So in the slicing, when you do slicing, all of us we have different considerations. As I said, we have to take out of the consideration during the slicing stage. So the example that I'm presenting here is more specifically applied to FDM technology, but then the principle involved will hold good for many other technologies too. So let's take an FDM as a technology here and see what are the considerations that are used in this slicing process. One is the material orientation. The way you print the bed, this is an example of a part here. It's of course obviously an engineering structural part here. So this is a part, you can either print them vertically like this, or you can print them vertically like this. Here the part is lying down, here the part is vertical. So when you print it like this, the layers will come in this direction. In this case, the layers will come this direction. So the part orientation would be different. The reason one of the considerations for using orientation of the part, there are multiple considerations for designing for orientation. One of the considerations for choosing the part orientation is typically in some of the 3D printing processes, there is a material property called isotropic properties. Essentially, in engineering, what we say isotropic properties are in all the three directions, that X, Y, and Z direction. In all the three directions, the material processes will be identical. So there will not be any differences in the material on these three directions. But in some of the 3D printing process, this is not true. In the X and Y direction, the strength would be more. In the Y direction, it will be less. The Y direction is the direction where the layers adhere to each other. So the layer addition, the strength of the part between the layer addition is likely to be the lowest in some other 3D printing processes. So in this case, the layers will be this way. So the tensile strength or other mechanical properties in this direction would be less, whereas in the other XY direction, it will be much better. Whereas in this case, the whole thing would get turned around in another direction. So this is one important consideration for figuring out what orientation you want to print the part in. And when you do this, there is another consideration that crops in. Once you figured out the orientation that you want, within a given orientation, there will be some areas which are called overhangs. And these overhangs are the areas where, let me just make this a little bigger for you to see. Okay, now I can see this better. Typically 3D printing is a place where you print layer by layer. That means we are kind of assuming that there is some layer available to print the next layer. And there will be cases where, like this particular section of the part, from here to here there are material available below, but below this layer there's nothing available here. So these kind of geometrical areas is called an overhang here. So there will be, so the overhang in this picture is different from the overhang on this picture. Okay, here the overhang areas are different. So this is one of the considerations for figuring out how do we orient the part. So once you have this overhang, then the next issue that crops up is how does 3D printing manage this overhang? How do they manage this overhang? We talked about orientation. Then these overhangs need support structures. So these are the support structures that get formed in the printing. So in the slicing software, you can make some special choices that you can make to figure out how you make the support and what kind of strength you want to support. As I said earlier, when it comes to post-processing, you have to remove the supports before the end use. So this slicing stage will give you some options on either making this strong or weak, or depending upon high precision, low precision. You can have different kind of support structure that are formed. So that is another feature that you want to make sure during the slicing generation. Please bear in mind that I'm saying all this with respect to the FDM process, but similar features would exist in all the software. Then you have to figure out what is the material that you want to use. What is the temperature at which the material have to print at. These kind of considerations have to go into your slicing inputs. Then there are also layer thickness. What is the thickness of the layer? We say we print it by layer. When you print them at very small layer thicknesses, so the layers would look a lot smoother than when you print them at thicker layers. When you print them with thicker layers, the layers appear to be rougher. They would be rougher on the outside surface. So that is a consideration. So this is a trade-off between, but obviously when you print them at a higher thickness, you can print them faster. The time involved will be less. When you print them at lower thicknesses, the time involved will be more. Obviously, because the number of layers will become too much, will more than in otherwise. So, but you'll get a better finish of the part. So layer thickness versus finish is one consideration that you have. Then there is another aspect here called infills. While 3D printing, there is a concept called infill that goes on 3D printing. These infills are essentially what we would call, you can relate them to scaffolding when they make a building. You have to put some structure inside the scaffolding to support the walls and all that. So similarly, we can put scaffolding kind of structures inside the part, and these lattice structures, we call them lattice structures. These lattice structures are the ones which supports gives rigidity to the part. So 3D printers are generally, you can make them either completely filled up inside, or you can have lattice infills on it, lattice structures infills in there. And when you have these infills, these infill density can be changed. How densely you want those infills, or you can change the geometry of the infill itself. In this particular example, I'm sure you'll be able to see that the infill are hexagonal shape, honeycomb shape, and these are triangular shapes. There are other choices available. So all these different shapes gives you a lot of flexibility in the 3D printing process, which in addition to the features that put during the CAD creation model, in the manufacturing process model parameters could also give you some functional advantages. So these are the considerations. These are there are additional considerations, but these are some of the major considerations which are used during the slicing stage of the 3D printing process. And now to complete their 3D printing workflow, the creation of the caudal and slicing and preparing a machine, this is called pre-processing, this is called printing, and this is called post-processing. So these are three distinct stages within the 3D printing process. Now, the next obvious question would be that, we talked about so many technologies and so many different principles and so much of process workflow. We talked about all this. How do I make a choice? How does one make a choice on which technology to use? Okay, the third one is material content and all that. So technology choice. So how do you make technology choice? The technology choice, the first step in technology choice is trying to figure out what materials that you want to work with. You want to work with metals, you want to polymers, you want to use some other material instead of marketplace polymers, or some other material that you want to use, chemicals, powders, liquids, whatever you want to use. So what is it you're going to use? So after you made the choice, the next question that you have in mind is what kind of form factor that you bring those materials in. Your input materials in the form of cylindrical filaments, or in the form of powder, or in the form of liquid resin. Is it a metal powder, or it could be some other material like sand, ceramic example. So there are different kind of material consideration, form factor consideration. You have material consideration, then you have form factor consideration. These are not very exhaustive list. These are just a flow chart being shown here to understand how you make your choices. So given a material, what kind of form factors can you get them in? And then given these two things, then you look at what technology option that we have. So you have a material option, you have a form factor option, you have a technology option. So for simply example, you take material and you want to use some polymer and you want to use some powders. When you want to use polymers and powders, now your choice is pretty much limited to SLS and MJF. These are the two technologies that you want to consider in terms of where you want to go with the technology. Or if you say, okay, this technology looks entry levels are expensive. How do I go from this to this technology? We have to change from powders to filament. So then some people, what they do is, especially in the pharma industry, I've heard examples where they say they take these powders and then mix them in what is called a heat melt extruder and combine them with other materials to make filament. So you move powders into a filament and come into this. So though the path shows like this, you can also have additional paths. You start with the powder, convert them to filament, and come back to FDM. So these are all the different representative ways of figuring out what is the best technology for the end experiment, research, or the end use that you have in mind. So this is the flow chart for the technology choice. Similarly, if you have liquid resins are ideal for SLA processes. In SLA processes, you can use a liquid resin and you have to add some additives into it to make them photoresistive. And then when you make them photoresistive, then they can use a SLA process. So if your powders, again, if you're starting with powders, you can powder them, dissolve them somewhere, and add some photoresistive additives to it, make them resistive. Now you have a liquid in which your powders already already dissolved or in a colloidal state there, and you can bring them to the SLA machine. So even though this flow chart shows like this, you can have other arrow paths within this flow path, and then you can come to appropriate technology based on what your end uses. Okay, now let's talk typically about the 3D printing in the pharmaceuticals. So what is driving this market? When you say market, it is more a business term. From a technology term, we want to say what is driving the adoption of the technology in different market segments. The main opportunities are there are rising awareness of 3D printed drugs now. Both at a research level, at a commercial level, and at the end user level. So rising levels these are the opportunities that are happening now. And then there's a growing healthcare infrastructure and increase in healthcare investment in emerging nations. So all these drivers present opportunities for this. And the drivers are high demand instantaneous soluble drugs. So there are many cases, again, as the earlier speaker spoke, he showed about some SLS-centered drugs for fast dissolution. In some cases, it could be solving dysphagia, the growing usage of 3D printing. These are the drivers. And still there are restraints. There are still restraints. There will be some adverse effects which have not been researched very well. And government regulation is still a fairly big impediment where regulatory bodies and research institutes and academic institutes have to work together and develop. There a lot of work needs to be done in the regulatory framework. So these are the restraints, but the drivers are more than outweigh this. So once this gets overcome, the adoption will happen very fast. Even within the limit, given the limited history of 3D printing, 3D printing in all industrial segments, the similar restraints and drivers existed. But once these drivers were addressed reasonably well, what happened in the marketplace was the technology adoption suddenly accelerated. So what was it? A research lab became mainstream use case, and this is what called adoption explosion. The explosion start adopting at an exponential rate when some of these things happen, and it is predicted that the pharma industry is in the threshold of the adoption explosion. When you say threshold, you talk about the next 3 to 5 years. In 3 to 5 years, the explosion is going to happen with 3D printing. This is what some of the technology pundits and the market development pundits are saying about pharma industry. Now, I'm going to some specific examples of using some of the technologies in the pharma industry. So I'm trying to go case by case. The first case I'm taking FDM. Why FDM? FDM is easily available. Okay, the entry barriers are very, very low. When you say entry barriers are low, even at an individual level, forget about institutions, colleges, even an individual person who is interested in this, he can buy an FDM printer at a cost less than an iPhone. You know, today iPhone costs 1.2 lakhs or something. So at less than the cost of an iPhone, you can buy an FDM printer. So these printers are available at very low entry level for very basic R&D research purposes. They may not be good enough for reliability testing. They may not be good enough for long-term production, but for R&D and design validation purposes, these kind of machines are fairly good enough. The other advantages in the FDM technology, since this lends itself to easy adoption and low entry barriers, there is a large community of end users in the maker community. So if you go to any of the communities and make members, people happily, you have questions, they happily answer your questions, and somebody would have already faced the question, some of the problem that you already have is already being addressed and answered. So there's abundant community engagement happening in this technology. That is another good enabler to adopt this technology. The know-how required is not very complicated. The know-how required is reasonably moderate. Anyone with a high school level understanding of science should be able to handle this without any problem. And this is open source information. That means most of the time you will not be violating IP practical rights from a technology usage point of view. But there could be IP and patent on the end use applications and ideation and all that. But from the 3D printing perspective, there are a lot of open source information available. And ease of experimentation is very easy to experiment with things. The iteration cycles could be anywhere from less than an hour to probably a few hours. So many iterations can happen very quickly. So these are the advantages of FDM technology. So here is a case that I found very interesting in one of my case searches. This is a paper published by the authors mentioned here. Later on, you can go back the details, read and details of the author. Here they wanted to have a gastroretentive drug delivery system. They call it GRFT, gastroretentive floating tablet. So what they essentially did was whatever the medicinal drug they wanted to use, they used a hot extruder here. The hot extruder was used to make the filament. And the advantages in the FDM processes, there are a couple of easily available, non-biotoxic, biodegradable materials which are easily adaptable for ingestion. And he makes it, one of them is called PLA. PLA is a biopolymer, and the most common origin for biopolymers is cornstarch. It is polymer, it is evolved from cornstarch. PVA is a synthetic polymer, which is essentially polyvinyl alcohol. So these two are acceptable in most biological pharma cases. So during this research, this team mixed the drug that they want to deliver with these hot melt extruder. Now they got a filament. They use a regular 3D printing machine to make this filament, and they use 3D printed tablets. And how did they arrive at now? Once you get this capability, now you got different process variables to arrive at what you want to do with the end use of the tablet that you want to generate. It can have differential shell thicknesses. There we talked about shells and infills and varying infill percentages. And you can change the infill patterns. And you can do shape. It is not necessary the tablet should be in a cylindrical shape. It could be in a star shape. It could be an octopus shape. It could. So you can change the volume to surface ratios for solubility. So all that extra results or result features in the tablet that you can achieve by this process. The result would be you can change the drug content, you can change the dissolution rates, you change the physiochemical properties, you can change the floating behaviors. So now it is a more and this is possible essentially because the early part of the thing is saying the nicest aspect about 3D printing is that the shape geometry is free. You don't have to spend extra money for complexity in shapes. So that is a feature that the pharma industry is now using it. So and then obviously they have done some trials. They did some in vitro trials to say what is the sustained rate. So from academic exercise, research exercise, or even the product development exercises, this technique lends itself for very easy experimentation. You can go back and read up on these things for more information. This is another interesting case using FDM processor. This is a biodegradable drug delivery implant. Again, the sources mentioned here. You can go read up the little bit more details here. So here is the interesting part is that the implant, the drug delivery implant, need not be surgically removed. Since it is used by biodegradable material, so over a period of time it is excreted by the patient, so there is no secondary surgery for removing of the implant. And then that is one big advantage. And the second big advantage is now you have a lot of options for experimenting with different shape sizes and all that, different materials for the device. And like here they're showing example of using PVA and PLA here. Okay, so these are PVA and these are PLA with combination of PLA and PVA. Why PVA? Why PLA? The PVA being an alcohol-based filament, the solubility of PVA in many solutions is much faster than PLA. So there they made the whole device with PLA with different shape geometries, and they tried here. And then here they made the device itself with PLA and made the screens with PVA. That means the screens are the ones which would dissolve faster before the casing dissolves, and drug deliveries will start happening. And by controlling the shape and size, you can have one large slit here, you can have multiple square holes, rectangular holes, and you can have multiple different shapes here. Then you can, now you know your dosaging delivery can be controlled by different methodologies here. This is another example of a very, very simple, easy, tryable experimentation with the FDM. And there are other examples like this where FDM gets involved. Now SLA again is fairly easily available. The entry barriers are probably a little bit more than FDM. At individual level, your cost of implementation could be probably $1 lakh or $2 lakh instead of less than $1 lakh. There is hardly any entry-level barriers. Information is available, technology available, machine manufacturers provide you know-how and all that. Again, that know-how required is not very complex. Good amount of not be abundant like FDM, but fair good amount of community engagement is available on the net for you to see. And the ease of experimentation, I wouldn't call this easy. I would call this moderate, but it got some special advantages that it has. The typical applications for SLA applications so far that have been experimented are all related to dosaging solutions and personalization tablets. Mass customization, personalization is a very, very possible thing with SLA technology. Just before we go ahead, if the distinction between FDM and SLA, other than the process itself, is that SLA process lends itself is a higher level of precision compared to FDM. The precision level in SLA is much better than FDM, so that is why the dosaging solutions are more likely to go into SLA solutions. So the typical considerations here are drug dissolved in a photosynthetic carrier, the complete preparatory task, yeah, okay, because these are light sensitive, the preparatory task of dissolution and most of these SLA printers work in the ultraviolet light range. The UV3, some of them work on 360 nanometers, some of them work on 405 nanometers. So your preparatory environment should happen in an amber environment, so that there is no polymerization happening during the preparation stage. And after this, during the process itself, there is a small, because it is a laser process, there are micro heat generated at the time at the point of contact with the laser with the point of contact with the laser and the resin. So the drugs and the carriers you use should be able to withstand those laser conditions. The third thing, the next consideration is here this is typically the post processing a little bit messier compared to FDM, in the sense that since it is done in resin, after the printing is over, there is a fair amount of viscous liquid sticking to the device or the part that you printed or the tablet that you have printed, and then that has to be cleaned. And the liquid that is sticking on top of that is not the cured one. There are uncured liquid resin, which is very viscous, that need to be cleaned. And typically you have to find materials which would tally with a cleaning solution. One of the most common material used is IPA. IPA is a very common material used in kind of application. Either you have to use IPA and make sure that your carrier is compatible with that and your drug is compatible with that, or you have whatever carrier company you are going to carrier and drug that you're using, you have to find appropriate cleaning medium. The other interesting part of this is that in SLA can create very complex shapes, and since these are more precision, you can create more complex shapes or finer resolution shapes that you can build here. So that gives you more opportunity for generating dosaging solutions. And the additional consideration is that you can do a mathematical simulation for release mechanism. If you have some basic information on dissolution rates with respect to weight surface ratios, things like that, you can use MATLAB software to see. Even before you do this experimentation, you can do some simulation, and you can correlate your simulation with the actual experiment that you do or development work that you do. Again, the process variables are here. You have different size options, different lattice structures, different shape options, different weight surface ratios can get. The results could be drug content and dissolution rate. This is what makes very interesting for the pharma industry for adopting this technology here. So this is as far as SLA and SLP goes. Okay, SLS. Okay, best suited for powder-based technology. I think in the previous presentation they gave a very detailed analysis of how SLS get deployed in manufacturing tablets and sintering tablets, multi-layer tablets, and all the orally disintegrated tablets. So maybe I'll just read through it instead of explaining this. Best suited for powder-based technologies, very appropriate polymer matrixes facilitate laser sintering. One of the problems with this technology is that there are a limited number of sources in terms of equipment that you can go to right now. But the good part is lab scale equipment are available. Lab scale equipment is still available if you want to do experimentation. Here the investment is a little bit more than FDM or SLA at academic level. At a personal level, it could be a little difficult, but academic level, it should not be. Institutional level, academic level, it should not pose a problem. Technical know-how is also not so widely available. So you have to, you need to have fairly steep learning curves. You have to go through, you need some supporting systems. You cannot just rely on community alone for this. And the community itself is relatively smaller for the technology. The main applications are orally disintegrating tablets, multi-layer tablets. These are the applications, the researchers that have been tried with. So that kind of pretty much completes my presentation. As I said, I'm not from the pharma industry, I'm more an engineering industry, so I'm pretty open to Now I open questions if anyone has any questions or any comments.
Yes, sir. There are few questions from the audience.
Okay.
Thank you. Very nice, informative lecture.
Okay.
The first question is, why is 3D printing is called additive manufacturing? Are both the terms are same thing?
Okay, it's a very good question. See, when you use it in a very casual manner, we can use additive printing and 3D printing as synonymous. You can interchange them. It could mean the same thing. But if you're in a very intense scientific technical discussion in that kind of a context, additive manufacturing is the whole ecosystem and 3D printing is a part of it. A substantial, considerable, big part of it of additive manufacturing is 3D printing. But with 3D printing, you're not bringing in concepts related to the file structure that you talked about, different software that we used, that is being used, and different post-processing processes that we have. All this complete ecosystem is called additive manufacturing, and the just part of printing alone is called 3D printing. So that is a very scientific, or if you want to make very precision definition of word, there is some distinction. But in a casual commercial thing, you can use them as both meaning the same. I hope I answered the question.
Right, sir. Right, surely. And the second question from you, sir, is what are the different techniques used for 3D printing in pharmaceutical technology?
I am not from the pharma industry. I'm not the best guy to answer this.
Okay.
So, but having said that, from my limited knowledge, I would say that FDM is used and SLS technology is used. And to the best of my knowledge, there is only one drug which is already in the commercial use. The other 3D print drugs are not in the commercial use. So that I said earlier during the application, mainly because of the regulatory issues associated with it. And also there's a chicken and egg syndrome here, that because the regulatory issues are not there, production is not happening, ecosystem is happening. So this is, in the next 3 to 5 years, I think this barriers will get broken, and this is when the explosion would happen. So to answer the question, there are the three things, all the three technologies are now being used. The FDM technology is being used, the SLA technology is being used, and SLS technology being used. In addition to these three technologies, there are also bioprinting technologies that are used. They use both in medical applications and pharma applications. In bio is used mostly in implants and pharma-based implants. There are drugs which are delivered through implants. There, bioprinting is also used. So these are the four broad things that are being used now. These four technologies are being used.
Okay, right, sir. Sir, one last question. Will additive manufacturing replace the traditional methods of manufacturing?
No, it will not. That is a very interesting question. It will not replace the additive manufacturing question. See, typically there are so many manufacturing technologies that evolved over thousands of years, right? The oldest technology, 2000 years old, is building a mold out of sand and pouring metal into it. That technology still exists. It's called sand casting. So evolution of new technologies does not throw away the old technology. It only evolves new use cases, new applications, and new end user benefits. Those are the things that new technology brings in. That is one historical legacy comparison to say that additive manufacturing will not replace traditional manufacturing. The second, market reality. The market reality is at a very global level. Manufacturing industry today is valued between 16 to 20 trillion dollars. When I say 16 to 20 trillion US dollars, talk about all manufacturing activities put together in terms of GDP. The manufacturing GDP is 16 trillion dollars, out of which today additive manufacturing is 25 billion dollars. It's not even 1% today. Okay, so it's at a 0.1% or something. So that is what makes it more interesting, because there is such a huge landscape of opportunity available, and that is what is going to make the whole thing. The word that I use is additive manufacturing is going to explode. What I meant by that is, now if it goes from 0.1% of the overall manufacturing industry, if it goes to 2%, that is a 200 times growth. So that is what makes it so interesting. So it will not, to answer that question traditionally, it will replace, in the technology, there are two terms normally used. When new technologies that come, one of the things, it will take away some of the applications for the existing technologies, That is called cannibalization. Will it cannibalize the existing technology? Most of the time, technology evolution does not calibrate. It will cannibalize to a very small extent. To a very, very small extent, it will cannibalize the existing technologies, but it will generate a new market segment for other applications, end users benefit, economic, healthcare, educative, all kind of other benefits get evolved. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you, sir. Sir, a few more questions.
Sure.
Sir, what is the advantage of 3D printing over molding or any other method?
Good, very interesting. See, when you go to 3D, when you go to molding or any other manufacturing process, if you do compression molding or injection molding, molding of plastic process, let's say. Before you go to the molding process, you need to build a mold, right? For automated molds. Even for the simplest of part, okay, to making the mold would cost you probably anywhere between, if it is a very simple part and if you've got a low volume production and not very high precision, then it will cost you probably close to ₹1,00,000 to make a mold, and the complex part may cost you crores of rupees to make the mold. But at 3D printing, other than the investment in the machine, there's no investment at all. The raw material is very cheap compared to the mold cost, So for small volume production, right, 3D printing is a very ideal case. Or if you want to set design iteration. So if you want to build a mold, building a mold may take few weeks or a few months, whereas 3D printed part can be done over hours. So if you want to make multiple trials to improve your design, those design samples, instead of waiting for months to make a mold, and you get one design made, and you find that you want to modify something in the design, you spend another few weeks, another few weeks. Traditional manufacturing process through injection molding will probably take you one year or 1.5 years to finalize your product design, whereas this can happen in probably 2 weeks. Even if you make 7-8 design, the whole design can be iterated in a couple of weeks. So that is a very powerful application for design validation.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So last question from our director, sir. Sir, can we hope 3D printing to be a successful in Indian context in a day to come?
No doubt. No doubt. It'll be a very, very. I see. Again, the interesting part about 3D printing in India is similar to many other technology adoption that have happened in this country. Okay. Just to give you India always lags behind Western marketplaces in terms of technology adoption. Depending upon whom you speak to, they will tell you our lag for technology adoption is anywhere between 5 years to 15 years. Okay. Nobody tells you that India adopts technology before 5 years. When I say adoption, what I mean is after the technology gets used with the end user case, the products are getting sold in the Western market. For a similar thing to happen in India, it's going to take 5 years. Whether it is electric mobility or telecom or software, or this is the historical background here. So we have always been 5 to 15 years. So let's say we are behind here on the 7-8 years. Probably I don't know how much we are behind in other thing. I'm making a wild guess saying that we are behind by 5 to 7 years. Okay, and in terms of adoption in Asia. The interesting part about lagged adoption is that India also managed to leapfrog technologies, right? So, for example, in 80s, when we were all waiting for or 90s, we were waiting for 4 years to get a telephone line, right? And then digital telecom came, then pagers came, then cell phone came. So we moved away from hello cell phone to a cell phone. We completely skipped the pager market. The pager technology was never deployed in India because there was a lag there. The better technology is available. So 3D printing will get adopted here, and we will have some advantages because we are a little bit behind at the adoption cycle. The other interesting happening that are happening in the marketplace, there are no new technologies being evolved out of the country because of this lag. Like a lot of people have tracked this technology and they're able to predict what is going to happen. So they are having new technology. So technology adoption in India will happen. It will explode. In my guess is next 5 to 10 years is when 3D printing technology on mainstream applications could take place in all kind of segments, especially in healthcare. In my mind, I generally divide healthcare into 3 sub-segments. One is called pharma industry. Other will call medical. When I say medical, mostly implants. Implants is what I have in mind. Implants and sensors inside patient. And the third one is external application. So in all this, mass customization is going to happen. So that market will explode.
Thank you, sir. I thank you, sir, for your very informative and detailed speech talk on the topic 3D printing and additive manufacturing. It clears our so many doubts and very much the in-depth concept of this topic. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity and your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I would like to our third speaker, that is technical session third, Mr. Roop. Okay, due to some technical problem, sir has not joined yet. Wait for 5 to 10 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can
Sorry.
hear you.
Hey.
Thank you, dear participants, for your patience. Now, I would like to welcome our today's third speaker of technical session third day 2 conference. That is speaker Mr. Rupam Chaudhary, sir, from Global Health Medical Devices and Pharma Manufacturing, EIS, TCS, New Delhi, to share with us his knowledge on the topic personalization and the digital update disruption of life sciences, a TCS perspective and experience. Mr. Rupam Chaudhary has 25 years of experience in end-to-end commercialization, especially for medical devices, diagnostics, and pharmaceutical companies. He joined TCS as a trainee probationer and soon pioneered TCS engineering services in the life sciences market 2 decades ago. And currently, he is responsible for this global business of TCS. His scope includes organization, design, collaborations, innovation, solutioning, and global service delivery. Mr. Rupam has consulted leading medical device organizations in a diverse range of interventional and restorative therapies. He helps clients accelerate innovation to market, achieve improved efficiencies in overall commercialization and manufacturing operations. His associations span CEO and other CXOs of the world's top life sciences firms. His last year Tata Innovista winner for piloted technologies, he has also been a leadership coach for TCS. His team has over 100 patents, including one awarded for innovation in the life sciences industry. Now, I would like to welcome you, sir. The topic of today's lecture is personalization and the digital disruption in life sciences, a TCS perspective and experience. Sir, please.
Thank you. Is my voice audible?
Yes, sir. Clearly audible, sir.
Very good. So thank you very much for having me, although it was a short notice. So I would bring in some perspective from the services industry, where all of the top pharma companies and life sciences companies in general, which include biotech, pharmaceutical manufacturing, medical devices, and diagnostic companies, which are playing a big part in their own way in the whole value of healthcare, as it is called. Within TCS, we also help customers who are in the payer and the provider space, which is the healthcare insurance companies as well as the hospitals. But we are not going to touch upon that in this short discussion today. I'm going to breeze to the slide, but I want to leave the audience with a philosophy that TCS really is leading the market space with, which we call Business 4.0. Essentially, the disruption of these technologies, which is technologies which are transforming themselves by being intelligent, agile, automated, and on the cloud. So essentially, we call this the fourth industrial revolution. It includes tenets of what you know about as Industry 4.0 or what we are calling Pharma 4.0, bringing together all these capabilities. And this is where the real disruption is happening. 3D printing, material sciences disruption, all are part of what we have termed as Business 4.0. And a big role of things like digital twins, about algorithmic methods, etc., which I will talk about. It's a perspective. This is what we see from our customers every day. We work with them in a lot of transformative journeys. So I'll give you a glimpse of what we are all about and what we see in the market should help you and the audience here think a little bit and relate to what you already know. And then maybe we can have a few questions. Focus on operations. My responsibility spans space, which includes the clinical space, the laboratory space, the space which includes commercialization. So we are industry, the pharmaceutical and biotech, also where a gentleman prior to me talked about 3D printing being a small part of the overall manufacturing market. But we believe that 3D printing does lead to quite an amount of democratization and the supply chain disruption that can so essentially is suffering with a big challenge of maximizing yield. Who are attached to the industry would know this. And essentially, we have a big bubble of in the process of manufacture that is a big issue. And of course, loss of revenue in those very strictly regulated markets. There are a lot of poor process reliabilities causing a lot of issues. The uptake and upkeep of the infrastructure is still, a lot of it are reactive and definitely are way more expensive than it should be in trying to maintain the productivity of those operations. And the other issue that is really real, and this is where the disruptions are happening, is that the data is really siloed. As you would probably know that process manufacturing has been automated, highly automated right from the get-go. Even a couple of decades back, we have seen these. But the amount of siloization has really led to a bottleneck where we have tons of applications and tons of databases which are separate, not yielding very easily to drive real meaningful analytics and take benefit from the business 4.0. And the cycle times, which are really to correlate data and contribute to a good batch report for the regulatory as well as quality reasons, it's very long. Another thing is that the data knowledge base is not common. And we, of course, have the IT/OT integration issues with now cybersecurity being really a big concern to the customers. So we focus around these areas to help the industry, eliminate some of these problems. And the targeted business performance indicators for what we call the manufacturing 4.0 technology is essentially during right from the process development, the transfer and upstream manufacturing, so formulation manufacturing down to the market release. It's really a time frame which averages around 3 years, and we have seen that up to 5% of COGS is the cost of poor quality, and that is where the application of the trends where we are looking at personalized medicine, the CAR-T productions, the drug device combination products which are coming in the market. A lot of software as a medical device is happening. Pharma companies, we are working with quite a few pharma companies in developing software which yield to better services, better efficacy, better compliance, etc. And that's really a challenge because the regulations are not really up to the mark in terms of giving guidance to the industry. A lot of benefits to address some of the challenges that are coming from the application of IoT, augmented and virtual reality, etc. There are quite a few robots that we have deployed in the field, which have increased quality and which have increased downtime. So those are some of the business, the KPI that really add to the. So sorry about the text, it went bad in the display process. But essentially, the components which you see in manufacturing and the digitalization solution and assets are something that we have structured, defined extensively, and the principles really to eliminate, to do end-to-end value stream integration and machines, AIs and bots, and of course being agile and product centric to capitalize on whatever you have existing, because it's not any strategic meaning to throw away what our customers have as assets and investments, but to be able to capitalize on the existing investments that they already have and using technology to realize bigger value out of it, and going to a very prognostic kind of customer centricity from just being diagnostics and then trying to problem solve every time. And what we have done over the years, we have created platforms. For example, for security, we have a blockchain platform completely validated on the cloud. We have a platform by which pharma customers can develop digital twins of their processes, of their experiments, of their models for drug development, etc. Connected Universe, which is a platform, which is really a It's a cloud agnostic IoT platform, can be deployed anywhere across multiple locations, any kind of platform, heterogeneous, insight, etc., etc. And analytics suites, which is absolutely AI/ML, cognitive computing suite that we have, and robotic solutions. So all of these are the existing assets that we take to the industry to help our customers address some of the challenges. And in the pharma manufacturing specifically, the enablers that we have, I'll talk about a few, and you can just look at the others, is enabling customers do tech transfer digitally. It's automating the recipe authoring, where the unstructured recipes that exist in customers through good nomenclature based on the AICTE standard, and automating the authoring process, the productivity and the turnaround time for product scale up, etc. We have constructed something called a quality hub, which ties in all the heterogeneous data sources using intelligence as well as all industry standards to connect to different data sources, which can help with very quick batch review and release while maintaining the genealogy and the traceability required as per the regulations. Customers, where we are able to connect and contextualize and then capitalize on the business. Essentially, it's a top-down approach. Experts care about, and how this architecture actually boils down to the people who care even at the operator level. Okay. So the digitalization of all of these that we just briefly APIs that a CEO cares about, a supply chain guy cares about, or a plant manager cares about, a quality or regulatory head calls about, they are different in their context, but at the same time, it is all about integrating these different data sources that is able to drive all of the matrices for all of them. For example, there are first in the world things that our company has done for customers. For example, taking the enterprise manufacturing data, even for seconds level operations, which are typically found in historians, down to the cloud, where tremendous amount of analytics and integrated analytics to help customers with zero touch quality check, with optimization of inventory across the enterprise, wherever they might have distributed manufacturing, and then environment monitoring and creating assets, digital twins of the process and assets throughout the platform that I just talked about. So that drives the ability for our customers to realize their particular KPIs from a centralized and a harmonized data sets without having to recapitalize. And when you do all that, you really need to look into what the companies operate by today. For example, if you look at the execution layer, if you look at the controls layer, which is one layer down below it, which is not so much a rehash and redo of everything, but make sense of something within ERP level. The batch will the losses and inefficiencies that are built with it. So we have got a very mature viewpoint on this, and I'll pause for a moment and see if there are any questions, because I breezed through a lot to make up for the last time. Any questions so far? Okay. There are no questions. Sorry.
Sure, sir. Not now, sir.
No problem.
I will ask.
So I'll just carry on to the part 2 of what I have thought I will just talk to you about. Is really some of the research areas that we are. It's not the comprehensive research areas. Some of the research we don't have the liberty to discuss in forums like this, but I'll mention a few so that you get a gist of where this the services company which we are leading is going on. Okay, so essentially the streams of work is essentially directed at looking at the cocktails, microbial cocktails for health and environment applications, in the DNA editing for computing, and for infections, at mostly nosocomial infection that happen. We are looking at ways and means of deploying digital to the discovery of novel drug candidates. You must have read in the public news about TCS contributing quite a few novel compounds for COVID-19, which globally quite a few companies have picked up, including our Indian drug research establishments have picked up for further work taken into the clinical throughput. We have open sourced all that work. We have not charged even a single rupee for it. Even researchers and companies from the US and from the UK and other geographies have just picked it up, and we have given them non-exclusive, no royalty, just open sourced it to them so that they can take it further towards the development process. So those are some of the work that we have done. We are also working on some innovative things like creating digital twins on many levels, and including the one which I had mentioned here of the actual cell. And then, of course, multi-omic toolkits for next-gen drug engineering, and protein design for the gene therapies and vaccine. This is something, the essence of this coming from TCS is really in silico, where we are working on computational methods, cloud computing. We are also working on quantum computing and applying all of the assets that and the know-how that we have around computing in general to help. The other piece of work that we are doing is really a simulation. I mentioned digital twin, but it's really simulating a lot of the biological barriers and sensors, and you can see a glimpse of all of this here. I will not talk about any of the details. Some of them are very early stage research, but we do believe that characterization of the human response and the sensors is a key indicator of which can contribute to both early disease detection and then monitoring during disease progression, especially from the pharmaceutical side, research, clinical trials, as well as the prognosis and outcome. One example is the work that we are doing on the artificial skin. There's a lot more detail to what I am showing you here, but just to give you a glimpse and idea, that essentially skin and human tissue in general is a big area of research for us, where we have deployed drug delivery for drug dispersion and many other aspects of chemicals and diffusion to the skin. We have also worked on this characterization of the skin in general for wound management, and a lot of in vitro and in silico skin models that we have developed. I mentioned about the inclusion of machine first, as we call it, AI in general, you can say, for drug development processes. And it does give a lot of advantage over the traditional method. Some of you may have actually learned this, you might have worked on it as well. But here we are actually deploying not just a traditional AI learning model, but ultimately going to the combination of the different properties, including structural alert, to come with the target specific NCEs. So this is an area of investment for us. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of this. We are also working with IIT Delhi. We have sponsored a large program in working with some key researchers in the development and deployment of the digital twins for continuous biological drug manufacturing. It's the first in the world. We're collaborating with other technology players as well. The other thing that I want to talk about is how we are disrupting the whole patient safety with pharmacovigilance work. That we are one of the world's largest services providers to the pharmaceutical industry in drug safety, clinical. Something that we have innovated is a very successful platform deployed over the cloud for many of our customers. And in some cases, we do end-to-end, right from the automated data collection for all kinds of intake, automated case processing that we have done, which yields to a huge amount of contrast in terms of errors in case processing, as well as the quality and accuracy of the data extraction that comes in because of this, not to mention the efficiencies and data analytics, which are the early detection of the trends and signals instead of using the past. So patented ingest and extract and take cognitive decisions Essentially, it's an overview, a layout. As you know, it starts from the intake and goes down to report submission. And it every piece of the way, there is a lot of technology at work. There is a TCS patented decision fabric platform, which is behind the scene, using the cognitive capabilities like optical character recognition, natural language processing, using a lot of ontologies, of course, deep learning, translations, and a lot of visual analytics that goes on to come up with this disruption in the patient safety area. It's very successful, already deployed, and we will just see more and more of this happening in the industry today. So that's in brief what I want to mention to you, talk to you about. And if there are any questions at this point in time, I'll be happy to address those to the extent I can.
No question right now, sir.
All right. Either I was very clear or I was way over the head.
It's clear, more or less.
Okay.
We are understanding.
All right. So if there are no questions, then I'll take your leave, get back to my routine. Is that okay?
Okay, sir. Can we wait some time
Sure.
for the queries?
Absolutely.
Dear delegates, please ask your queries or send in the chat box. Received one question, sir, from the audience side. What are the regulatory perspectives of personalized medicines?
All right. Well, thank you for the question. There are two projects and customers that we have worked on for this. One of them, as you know, the most popular one, cancer therapy, where reprogramming of CAR T cells and for lymphoblastic leukemia, I think it's been a successful one. It's very expensive. So the regulatory pathway and the regulatory perspective for this twofolds. One is towards those gene-based or cell therapies, where it's very clear cut because the IFU and the claim that the customers are making are very focused onto the disease type, and they have got enough of clinical data to prove the efficacy beyond the traditional method. So that's a straight cut risk-benefit ratio that they provide in their certifications. So regulators are all okay about it. The quandary which I think we should all look forward and study is the quandary that the regulators have when it comes to using computational methods, specifically when you're using software algorithm-based algorithms. Not so much for discovery, that because that is still in silico is taken as a efficiency tool more than a tool to actually prove efficacy at this point in time. But when you bring all of this together, when you bring the capability to do in silico drug development, but you're looking at in silico CKPD, safety assessments of clinical trials, and when you use more and more of that backend to prove efficacy, that is where the issue comes, and regulators are a little bit not so developed about it. And what we are facing in the industry is that as we are looking at real world evidence, we are looking at algorithms on top of data that comes in from patients, not just from the post-market safety perspective, but during trials as well. That is where the regulations are a little bit hazy. Now, one of the other trend that is also happening is that a lot of these trials are actually coming with data attached to patients. So you are having, for example, ECG, single lead ECG data coming in, you're having gait data coming in, you're having other basic, sensors like oxygen and Gate also is coming in through sensors, and all these software tools that you're putting out there, it's going beyond the regular validation. And when you put in AI on top of it, basically you're putting in self-learning algorithm. That is where the regulations are very hazy. So the FDA is running a pre-cert program on what they're calling SAMD. We have contributed to the FDA's request on AI in SAMD. So these are a bit hazy. So as you, if you're a manufacturing company, I would greatly encourage you to participate with the FDA. There are 9 players right now who are working in these areas, and they are developing right now.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your very informative speech on the topic. And we also thank you, sir, for accepted our invitation from your very busy schedule. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I look forward to visiting your campus someday post-COVID, and
Sure,
maybe get
sir.
to talk about all of the COVID work that we are doing at Tata. Latest one that at Tata we have contributed to a 10,000 bed hospital near the Delhi airport, as you know. So very happy, very proud to be a part of the Tata Group, which is doing so much for this country, and look forward to meeting you guys someday. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Take care, sir. Stay safe. Bye-bye, sir. Okay, thank you all delegates and participants. Now this morning session will be closed, is now up to close, and we'll meet you at 2 p.m. that is for the e-poster presentation. See you after lunch. Take care.